so excited to be with all of you this morning to join us in this Mergers Unpacked, Safeguarding Service Technology and the Traveler Experience. It's so important that we manage through these things, and certainly we see a very large merger in the TMC space, but we've also seen announcements in the OBT and TMC space. We see new and different entrants sort of partnering up with new and different providers. So we just thought this might be a really great time to share some of the learnings that we've had. We've had a number of engagements connected specifically to this, and so we just wanted to share what some of the findings were that we're doing that. So if we could, let's move to the next slide. And we are so delighted to have Colleen join us. As you know, Colleen has been in this industry and leading and innovating for many years, driving transformation, being able to do just about everything in managed travel that one could do. And we had the great pleasure of getting to work with Colleen on some projects. And so we were just thrilled to have her. So Colleen, thank you for joining us. And
Thanks
Jamie,
for having me, Will.
You bet. Jamie is a new team member at Gold Spring. She's done this a long time. A lot of consulting background in her experience on the TMC and some other sides. But with that experience, she's been driving innovation as well and transformation because she looks at things from a strategic as well as a tactical perspective. So Jamie, thanks again for joining us.
Of course, thank you.
And the weak link, me, and I'm delighted to get to at least kick us off, but we're going to get to the experts with Colleen and Jamie here just in a moment. So if we could, let's move forward. And this is the reason for today's webinar. And again, we're grateful that you've joined us. Change is inevitable. Now, if you want the bad joke, a comedian once said, except from a vending machine. So I love that joke. Change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. But there are three areas that we have to be really focused on. The first is adapting to the technological advances. And we know with what AI is doing and how rapidly it's doing it, we are seeing changes by the day. Secondly, we have to make sure that safety and compliance is paramount. We have to care for travelers. We have organizational responsibilities. We even have some liabilities in some places. And lastly, every time there's a challenge, the other side of that coin is an opportunity. So being able to be flexible and understand how we can convert travel disruptions into growth and innovation is really one of our key success points. So let's move forward. I just want to introduce this concept to those of you that may or may not have heard it from us before. But what you're looking at are the 6 most common answers to the question, why do I manage travel? Or why do we manage travel? So when a senior leader says, why don't we let people go to the internet? Oh, this NDC thing I'm hearing about, that seems to be on their websites and not through our managed travel. Why don't we just let people do that? Well, these are the 6 most common reasons that majority of programs choose to manage travel. The first is cost. We want a fair cost. Travel policy kind of determines what a fair cost of a trip is, but we want to manage that. So we want competitive shopping and we want fair compares and hotel shopping and ground and rail. So we generally want to manage within a policy. Sustainability is a large and growing area. Might not be on your list of strategic drivers, but we see it more and more. The idea that we need to make the travel program more green and more favorable to creating a sustainable environment. Third, if you're in the business of working with governments or NGOs, or you have government grants, you generally, or your pharma, you generally have regulatory compliance requirements. You have to report on who you're paying for and what the reasons are. And so if you have that, having a centralized place to do that generally is a winning strategic driver. Travel satisfaction, most organizations care. They want travelers to have a good experience. And with this competition of what we're seeing, the rapid pace of what's happening in the leisure side, you're competing. You're competing with leisure products all the time. We have been for a while, but AI seems to have heightened that. So we want to create a good situation. So we want to manage that. And if they go and do it on their own, that may work well until they're, in the line with 200 other displaced airline passengers waiting to get serviced, right? So we try to do that. Duty of care, we mentioned caring for them. And then lastly, process efficiency. We don't want them to have to take an hour to book a point-to-point trip. We want something that works really well, works for them, and creates a good environment. So generally speaking, these are the 6 drivers The reason we're highlighting these is as Jamie and Colleen share their experiences, this will help us understand how could we anchor back to these. And a real life story is that several of our clients have anchored these with their C-suite and have been able to get additional budgets for things. Because once you say, hey, C-suite, you say that, let's just say traveler satisfaction is really a growth area for us. Well, here's a new technology I'd like to deploy, but it comes with a price tag. But you said that was a key driver, and they said you're exactly right. So it's not only a good thing to do to keep the alignment, but it's also a good way to sort of get budget when budget might not be as easily available. Let's go on. Our agenda is very, very simple. We're going to talk about a macro view of some of these considerations that will help you mitigate risk and help you create a better situation when you do have suppliers either merging or unmerging or any of those changes. We're going to start at a higher level. Then we're going to break it into the strategic components of that, and then we'll finish with a tactical view. But before we go on, I just wanted to tell the audience a quick story. So a travel buyer had completed a very hard negotiation between two suppliers and did not choose the incumbent, chose the new supplier. And she knew that was going to create a great deal of internal selling, detailed communications, and a whole lot of change management. So after many presentations, analysis, and convincing, her manager agreed to the company-wide supplier change with one very large caveat. Okay, we'll just have to move on from here. So at this point, I want to pass it over to Jamie so we can move the slide forward and let Jamie kick us off here with key areas to consider.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Will. I appreciate it and so excited to be here with Colleen today and all of you. Thank you for joining. And so these key areas of consideration, right? Something like this, a merger, companies coming together, regardless of what aspect of the industry you're in, it's a big deal. It's very complicated. It's very complex. And so what we try to do is break it down into these 5 areas that we're going to go through today. Again, kind of macro level, strategic, tactically, and things, things to consider, risk mitigation. Colleen's going to share a lot of her extensive experience and what she's gone through, what may have gone well, what may not have, and just things to get you thinking so that if and when you're facing this, regardless of where you sit in the industry, if you're a buyer, you're a supplier, things to go through and we're going to talk through today. So moving ahead, the first section will go through service and support continuity. Obviously, these are some very, key areas of consideration and, relationships and culture and service continuity. We are all in travel. Relationships and trust are critical. And travel comes down to, at the end of the day, people helping people. So whether it's those you're interacting with across the industry as buyers and suppliers, like I mentioned at a business level, it's as importantly for us to think about the travelers themselves. And so we're in kind of a unique position where we're kind of in the middle of this entire ecosystem. And having that major change ahead, brings a lot of uncertainty. And, starting on the left-hand side, relationships and culture, you may have been building relationships across your entire, stakeholder base from top to bottom for oftentimes many years. And when something's announced and, what you're used to is going to change and merge with someone else can be a scary thing. It's critical to know, out the gate, what is that landscape going to look like at the end of the other side? At all levels, again, leadership shifts, your executive sponsorship, both at your acquired and acquiring companies, and your own internal stakeholders. They've got relationships, again, over varying amounts of time that can be impacted. It's a scary thing to kind of think about, but who's going to stay, who's going to go, who's going to carry over that knowledge of your program and what you know day in and day out is really important to know. And culturally, who's staying, who's going, what does the new landscape look like? And does that truly align with your mission and values of your company at the other side? And I know, Colleen, you're going to talk about that a little more, but just overall staff integration, program management, again, is key. Regardless of what sector you're in, those program managers are truly an extension of your travel family, of your program. And facing, shakeups to those people can again be a big deal for you in your considerations and what you want to prioritize moving forward. You'll see program scale and prioritization here too. Relationships are key, and having the right fit is key too. Before maybe you were that small fish or the big fish in the small pond, and you were really used to a certain level of punctuality and service and customization. Maybe in the end game, right? You're the small fish in the ocean, and what does that now mean? Are you kind of lost in the shuffle of a now larger company? Something to always keep in mind. And escalation paths again goes with executive sponsorship and staff alignment. You and your staff and your people are used to who you go to when you need something done quickly with your acquired company. And so those can be kind of hard habits to break. And building the trust of knowing who you can go to on the other side is key. And having that support the whole time. And then on the other side over here, service continuity. No matter what sector again you're in, the key to success are happy travelers, right? Happy travelers mean happy travel managers, happy travel providing companies, right? Everyone's happy. And when travelers are not happy, that's where everything starts to break down. And so we'll talk a couple times throughout this conversation today, but really using data is going to be very important for you. So having that accountability, having clear SLAs so that you can truly measure and drive that accountability if and when things aren't meeting those standards. Going down the line, operational leadership, again, depending on that, program management, operations, regardless of company, go hand in hand. They hold a lot of knowledge about your travelers, about your policy, about what you like to do, what you can't do. So again, understanding that new landscape is key. Going on to service disruption, right? We've all had those after hours incidents as travelers ourselves, I'm sure. And whether you're an airline or whether you're a TMC or whether you're a hotel, how those incidents are handled, again, feeds back into either probably a really good outcome or maybe a really bad outcome. And that then breaks the loop of happy travelers, happy travel managers, happy companies. So that again, really looking outside of normal business hours, how is that support going to be handled throughout the longevity of the merger? And then global service configuration and footprint. What does this new company look like from, globally? It could mean offices are closing, offices are coming together, headquarters are changing. Maybe headquarters are in the same town as your company's headquarters, and now it won't be. Maybe local agencies aren't going to be used anymore. And so I think it's important, whether it's on the operational side, on the service side, program management side, there's a lot of considerations that come into support to really understand from a global, regional, local perspective, what does my new world look like? And, what do I need to consider? And so I'll go ahead and move forward here. And Colleen, I would love to get your thoughts from your experience, on this first topic.
Yeah, just for some context, when I was managing a global travel program, I was on a hamster wheel of 7 years of acquisitions, divestitures, mergers. There were some big ones in there, but there were also a lot of small ones. And with all of that comes some anxiety on both sides, because change is inevitable, like Will said. There's going to be changes. You're merging cultures, and you're going to hear things pre-merger, pre-day one, that are going to tell you like, hey, this is going to be great because we're very similar, our values match up. And when day one hits and you actually do come together, you may find out that that's true, your values are very similar, but the way you operate and the way that the companies, think may be very, very different. And so I just want to mention that, because that's an impact to the culture, right? And you may think that your cultures were very similar. It happened with our big merger that I managed, and it was you can recognize how similar some things are, but then understand that operationally you may be very different. There will be differences in the way decisions are made. You may have great people on both sides, but you'll have to deal with the things that are very different and how you integrate those. There will typically be consultants involved who will, give you a lot of information. And I remember the consultant saying, this is going to be such a great fit. And, you have such great people. And the reality when it came right down to it was we ended up being very, very different from a culture, from an org structure. And that took a lot to integrate those things, right? So it was a heavy lift in the end when you thought, based on what you were hearing, what I was hearing, that it was going to be very simple. Even simple things like the HR systems may be something that's going to come down the road. So people may have different holidays. They may have different, pay structures for a while. And so that's important just to recognize. You may be operating differently for a period of time. The other thing is juggling of relationships. That's key, and understanding that there probably will be changes, whether it's on your side, whether it's on your supply side. You have two entities coming together, right? So there's duplication, and that will require the understanding of what the impact of that is, and then you to develop a plan to manage that, to maintain your service, to maintain your SLAs. But I encourage everybody to look at this as an opportunity, right? It's not always bad. There are great things about companies that are coming together. There's reasons that they're coming together, but also understand that they have a lot to deliver on the side of, on their side, to be able to deliver to their shareholders, to their customers. It was the case with us, and there are a lot of pieces that do have to be managed. So.
Perfect. Thank you. We can go ahead and move forward. And I think you hit on something that really resonated with me as we've prepared for this, that while a lot of what we're talking about is, risk and risk mitigation and considerations, again, it's not all doom and gloom, right? These are things to consider. It is risky. It is a big deal, but there is a lot of opportunity. And so I think it's important too that we'll be covering that as we go through today. And so here, the second section that we're going to dive into: technology integration and consolidation. A lot of the same considerations come into play here, as the culture and relationships and the people. Understanding what stays and what goes is really important to the long-term roadmap of your program. Down the left-hand side, and looking through a global lens, a regional, national level, you'll find, a wide assortment of integrations that you've been using, maybe proprietary platforms that may not be carrying over into the future, tools that make your day-to-day successful, what's going to be used, what's maybe proprietary on the new side that you're going to have to move to. How does this work with your stakeholders, and how do you communicate up to make sure that they are in the know without being too far in the weeds? I think it's important. Anything custom that you have going on, make sure that you're, noting these, having the conversations. Several other considerations listed here, a little more technical, but, anything agent facing, especially more on the TMC operational side, those agent facing platforms, people booking travel for somebody else. Right? Changes in those platforms can be a big deal. There's a level of training, there's a level of effort, quality assurance as they're learning something new. Same with the GDS transition, that can be a really big deal. There's agents out there who have 30 years experience using the one platform that they know. And if it hasn't kind of moved along to the, more point and click type of world, it's a big deal for them to transition to using something new. So understanding that. Another thing to consider, your global reporting and data elements. Will, I know you talked about this at the beginning, right? But you're gathering data across all different aspects of the industry to show, what you spent money on and why. Are you going to be able to maintain that same level of reporting? Will the same fields carry over? Do the countries have the same capability to report on what you're used to in, the old world? That's something really important to know, and the data elements and how you'll access your data. What else? Traveler facing touch points. put yourself in the shoes of your travelers. What's going to change for them day to day that they're using? Is it an app? Is it, they're getting text messages? What new phone number are they going to use if they need help at 2 a.m. because they're stuck somewhere? Duty of care and same level, making sure, buyers out there, you have that continued support of knowing where each and every one of your travelers are 24 hours a day and being able to contact them as things transition. I think that's a huge, level of comfort for you and your travelers to know that that's supported. And then, again, some more technical pieces to think about, things like your back office systems, mid office systems, things that are processing through the ecosystem of travel. You may have a well-oiled travel approval process in place that's been working great for 15 years. And now you gotta, does that carry over? Do I have to rebuild it from scratch? Other things or opportunities maybe that as you're rebuilding, you want to make better, on the other side. So again, kind of looking at the positives here, considerations for your HR feed, again, getting that data to the right places at the right time. Online booking tool administration, sometimes you have that level of support, or whatever the tool may be, that level of dedicated support. Is that carrying over? Does that become a new cost item? Is this something new that you are going to have to consider? Or if you're the one providing, that assistance, what does that mean for you, on the other side as well? So I think just looking, across all of these different platforms and just, again, things to make you think and have those conversations internally with your teams and your stakeholders to make sure that you yourselves are prepared. I will move
Yeah,
ahead.
Jamie, I was going to say, I had to smile when you talked about the changing of the phone number, because I remember this happening, right? When we went through this, and just recognize the complexity in that, right?
Yeah.
It seems very simple, but there are a lot of there are a lot of things that have to happen to change a phone number on both sides, and a lot of communication has to happen. You have to understand, are the same people going to be on the other end of the phone?
Right,
Where is
something
that
you would
phone
think could
number
be
listed?
easy.
Yeah, right. And so it's just recognize the complexity and how much goes into something that may be seemingly very, very simple. But I want to again reiterate just, the technology, the consolidation of your technologies post merger and acquisition isn't just about efficiency, right? It's not just about having duplicate systems and merging them into one. It's about redefining what that experience is for your customers, right? So take that into consideration. Don't just take it as a, as a task that has to be accomplished. Look at it. Take the time to really dig in and say, okay, what's different here, and what are the best of both, and how do we bring them together? It really is an opportunity, and I think it's the most successful programs are going to be the ones that lean in early to shape their roadmap. Yeah. And use the transition to elevate their travel strategy, right? So you have some control here. You don't, you're in the driver's seat. So look at what the opportunities are. What are the best of both? How are you going to respond, right? And I would say not just respond, but be proactive in developing a strategy with what you want to do. It does take an understanding of what the differences are. I remember, I'll call it the Colleen Kearney UTC merger when I first joined the company. I came from a very, CPG company into an aerospace company. Those are very different, very, very different cultures. So when I came in, I had to get used to a lot of different things, and I look at that as kind of my first merger experience coming into, my last role, because there was, there was a huge shift, and I had to first understand where we were, what were the differences, how do we manage things in this company versus the previous one, and then how do I bring my experiences into the new experiences I'm about to have, and merge those to make the best of both. So I think it's the same with technology. It's a huge opportunity. It's an opportunity. You're going to make changes anyway to introduce new tech, and so know what's out there, understand your market, and what's going to be best for this new, in your new world. And, take advantage of the opportunity to control your costs in that environment as well. So, because it could get very expensive.
Yeah, all good points. And I think, again, being proactive and being educated. There is so much technology coming out, emerging every single day, right? So it's really being educated and knowing, and it is opportunity to, try something different. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving ahead here onto the legal side, contractual obligations and data privacy. So we've got one slide on this. We'll kind of bounce back and forth here, but two very inevitable and risky aspects of any company merger where a lot of liability, can be at stake if something's not handled properly. And how can you help mitigate those risks, again, in a proactive way and throughout the entire process? And I know, Colleen, you've got a lot to speak to, again, on the opportunity side here too. So on this next section, we'll look, legal considerations, data considerations. Regardless of where you sit in the industry today, always important areas of focus. And disruption to them can really cause a situation to unravel quickly, right? This is the time to understand where you're legally bound and ensure it's not only maintained moving forward, but you take the time to see where possible where you can optimize it or make adjustments now to protect yourself down the line. Talking about pricing trends, maybe you've had the same pricing structure with your acquired company for a long time. Maybe the acquiring company has a different culture, a different approach, a different preference on how they do things to make their revenue. Do you agree with it? Are you okay with that down the line when you have to renegotiate in this new environment, or not? Be ready to, have those conversations. Data privacy, always so much buzz out there about this. It's something that has to be closely monitored in conjunction with your IT groups on both sides. It's a big deal. Will there be changes to your data ownership clauses, controller agreements? Will data be owned by a new country that presents a problem? Will cross-border data transfers cause any concerns, right? Things that you may not have had to think about for a long time. But, it's in the weeds, but important to be proactive and understand it for long-term implications, right? And again, the data piece, SLAs, performance guarantees, what are in those contracts today? Are they being met and are you happy with it? And if not, here's the opportunity to change that. Maybe it's just been the way it's been done for a long time. Well, now's that time. You're kind of forced to shake it up anyways. So go ahead and do that. Data considerations, again, data is a huge part of all of this. What are their disruption plans, right? Things may not always go as planned. So what is the plan B? What client specific processes again are going on that won't be supported, or how will that be managed? Historical data, always tricky, right? Ensure you're clear where how and where it's going to be stored, for how long, how you can access it. This may or may not require contractual changes. But especially again, like Will alluded to, considering different verticals out there, the data and reporting elements can be very important, especially in certain verticals, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, aerospace and defense, government, right? There's all of those different levels and extra requirements that have to be met across the entire industry. Make sure that that's going to be supported properly. And you have to know what your contracts truly mean. And, there's conversations that you can have around this stuff, whether, it may be something that's not going well, or again, Colleen, to your point, right now is the time to really optimize things, change it up.
Yeah, I think it's key. One point I really want to make is know your contract, right? There's two sides to this. There's a side as a customer, and you have, maybe have merged or acquired another company. So you're going to have two contracts, right? That you're going to be looking at. You're going to need to merge those relationships. So you're going to have some opportunity to really go through, understand what each of those say, merge those, bring them together. It may be an opportunity for leverage, maybe not, because the spending might be with the same supplier, maybe not. But it's an opportunity really to open up what's in there, look at your pain points, what's working, what's not working, see what's different about those contracts. And then, in the case of today's world, and I think what, probably sparked this is there's some acquisitions going on that are going to in the supply base that are going to really have an impact on, customers of the companies being acquired, right? So know what's in your contract. Do you have assignment? Do you, can you continue with what you have and the pricing that you have? Can that change? Can we open it up and look at what new things do we want to pull in, right? And so just know that. Know what your position is. Understand what you can leverage. Address your pain points, what's working and not working. Again, there's that opportunity that you want to take advantage of while this is fresh and new and everybody's excited about it. Don't be proactive, right? And so know it. Don't wait for that supplier to come to you. Go to them and say, hey, there's changes happening. This is what we want to address. These are some things. Tell us how you can do that. So any time there's some type of union or divestiture or merger, whatever we want to call it, acquisition, there's going to be conversations around the legal considerations and obligations. There's going to be documents that have to flow back and forth. But it really truly is. You can beef up the strength of your contract. And I would, my best piece of advice here is take the lead on it. Don't sit back and wait for it to happen to you, right? So the other thing is with the data considerations, it's probably the time. You may have done this a year or two ago and you have some information. I don't know how often everybody updates those. We did them every 2 years. But it may be an opportunity just to update that information, right? And the last point I'll make, Jamie, is if you are, let's just say that you have a merger in your company and you have 2 suppliers, you're going to be bringing those contracts to one supplier or bringing that business to one supplier versus having 2. Make sure you are lined up before that decision is made on how your data is going to come back to you. It's your data, right? But unless you have that agreement up front to transfer that data, it can be very, very difficult to get what you need. So make sure that agreement before the decision is made with both of those companies, that you have some legal, right to the information that they hold today. Because whichever one you leave, they may be a little bit difficult in getting your historical information once that decision is made and you're going with a different supplier.
Yeah, no, so important. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, moving ahead, I just want to check in real quick before going further. Will and Melissa, are there any questions you want to pop in with in the chat, or should we keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay, guys. So we're going to take a little change in direction here. So, right, all of this we're talking about is change, right? And so change management priorities is this next section, right? How do you handle this is, I think, a major area of success or failure, I think, in something like this. So we would love to hear from all of you. And so keeping mergers and acquisitions in mind, if you could all go ahead, grab your phones. And we're going to go ahead and do a quick word cloud just to gather everyone's thoughts that first jump to the front of your mind when you think of change management priorities in general. There's no wrong answer here. We're just interested to see trends and what's relevant with all of our attendees. I'll hop to the next screen to launch this. Just a quick note, if you put in an answer that's more than one word, just put a hyphen between the words versus a space so they don't get separated as one topic per word, if that makes sense. Okay, so hopefully you guys are all seeing the screen. So Melissa, I
And
believe
Jamie,
has
just
put,
one more thing.
yeah,
We'll give Melissa also put the poll in the chat. So if you see it in the chat, and then last thing, Melissa is also willing to help. So if you don't get to the poll and you just want to chat your word, Melissa will upload that for you. So thank you very much for participating. We love when you do this because we get a chance to hear what you're thinking and what you're concerned about, and we can tailor our comments on the next few slides to fit that. So thanks very much. Jamie, back to you.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so far we've got communications coming through. It says it's still loading. So I'm not sure if it's, oh, here we come. All right. Communications is getting real large. which is good. Interesting to see. We'll give it just another minute here to see if anything more comes through. And once it stops moving, I'll go ahead and move forward. There's a couple more. Minimizing disruption, absolutely the name of the game. Procedures, communication, big. Leadership, great. See what else comes through. All right, well, so if there's nothing more coming through on the chat, I think, again, even we've got a couple things here. It may be a little backlog for some reason, but regardless, obviously already a few key things coming through that you can all see here. So I will go ahead and move forward, and this does actually align well with what we wanted to go into here on this slide in this section. So again, across all impact or all aspects of our industry, keeping traveler satisfaction and satisfaction of your stakeholders is very important. And especially in times of major change, you want them to feel the least amount of pain, right? That's the name of the game. So proper handling of change management through a transition like this will go a long way with them to give you the time to focus on the day-to-day and not putting out fires. And they have the trust and confidence in what's going on and what's changing. So ensure you're educated across all of these different methods of communication and content to get the right fit for you and your people, right? It could be a matter of email campaigns. Maybe it's banners to put in your online booking tool. Maybe it's content the acquiring company is going to give you throughout the merger to put on your company intranet to be able to communicate and show timelines and what they need to do next in the transition. What traveler touch points need to be considered. Are they using chat? Do they have an email address they're used to getting an answer from within 2 hours? Traveler facing websites and tools. Something I find really fascinating is the generational preferences we've got down there. It's something that's really been more of a focus, I think, in the industry with 4 generations in our workforce today. I myself have a daughter in middle school and am already losing the ability to communicate with her in certain ways because they have come up with a whole new language for what I thought were basic words. Shout out to all the parents on here who can relate. I have no idea half the time what she's saying, right? So how do you take into consideration, you may have a traveler base or an employee base ranging 4 generations. How do you communicate stuff like this? How do they want to be communicated to? Maybe you have a couple different options, right? Younger generations don't want to read a 25-page travel policy or a novel about what's changing and why. I'm a millennial and I really don't either, right? So how do we use things like AI, videos to communicate change in policy, internet banners, right? Mobile tech, there's so much coming out, but getting the right way to communicate with people at the right time, I think is really important. And then on the other side, and Colleen, I'll let you hop in after this, right? Again, the data, the timelines, the measurement, it's back, it's important. Are those roadmaps, those timelines you're being given, are those settling with you? Do you guys have the same shared goals? If you don't, use that as an opportunity, be proactive, right? What you're presented with the first time doesn't necessarily have to stick. How are things going to be measured? Performance KPIs, again, very important so that if and when things aren't happening as they should, you've got that data to say, hey, this is what's supposed to be happening. What do we do about it?
That's
Potential.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jamie. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, lastly, I just wanted to touch on, right, could be policy impacts. I think a big thing to consider too is the acquiring company providing any kind of project management or an allocated resource to help you through this, right? These can take a long time. Right, they may give you a roadmap, but do you have that day-to-day person, monitoring what's going on? Do you have that escalation path? What if something deviates? And it's something that we like to recommend too is do a baseline traveler survey pre-merger and do one post-merger so that now you have, again, that data to say, hey, my travelers were pretty happy doing XYZ. It doesn't seem to be translating on the other side. Where do we have to bring things together?
Yeah, I think, what matters most is your travelers, right? And this is a really, really important piece of this process. you saw how big communication got in the word cloud that we did. And if your company has a change management group to help with this, engage them. If they have a communications team, engage them. Try not to take that all on yourself. It is important to understand how your travelers respond and what kind of communication they respond to, right? Is it email? A lot of times emails just get lost, right? So is it putting, information and pop-ups on your booking platform? Is it, putting something on your homepage, if you can do that? Are there newsletters? Are there videos that you could potentially do? I had this idea I wanted to implement called 2 Minutes with Travel, just to take away some of the mystery of what was happening and how to manage through it, right? So, and the attention span of people is very short these days.
Yeah.
So make sure you're communicating in a way that just gets through to them, is short and succinct, and gives them the information and only the information, that they absolutely need. So it needs to be timely. I'm a big strategy person, so I think that when you get through, you get to day one and you understand the impact of what's happening, sit down and map it out. Like, what is the strategy? How are we going to communicate? What do we need to communicate? Put the details down, pen to paper, and map that out so that you have a plan. Stick to the timeline, and go through what needs to be done, engage the right people at the right level, get touch points and a team together that's going to, help with that. Taking that all on yourself, no matter the size of your company, is going to be a huge weight to bear, right?
Yeah.
So I would say engage a team, get champions, employ champions around the company to help with that. That are going to be, I recall through one of the mergers we did, we changed suppliers. We moved half of the company to a new supplier, for one of our, for car rental. And I'll tell you, that was a huge impact, right? Because the companies that we were each dealing with, different companies, operated very, very differently. And so there were behavioral changes that had to happen for them to engage with the new supplier. There was a lot of noise around it. So there was a lot of education that had to be done. We developed new KPIs to address some of the points that were being made by some of the employees that were unhappy. And so just understand that there may be things, listen to your employees too. And when there are repeated issues or comments or, successes even, take that to heart, integrate it into the strategy that you have on paper and address it. Don't let it sit and fester. So, it comes to do a baseline satisfaction survey every so often. It doesn't have to be detailed, just like understand what's happening, how they're feeling, and then work to address it.
Yeah. Love that. We'll go ahead and move forward. And I think Colleen, this feeds in well to our next section. I'll let you continue to kick off here, right? Awareness and education. I think that's kind of been our underlying message throughout, right? Be aware, be educated, be proactive. And so
Yeah.
I'll let you go ahead here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just some things I started to talk about, got ahead of myself a little bit, but yeah, there's always a financial component to mergers and acquisitions, right? So if you're a publicly held company, you're answering to Wall Street and you have things that you're going to have to deliver. But what I want to reiterate is see the opportunity in two companies coming together. There's buying leverage. It could be a lot of work, but it's not all bad. There's opportunity here that you can take advantage of. So be, intentional, be proactive versus reactive. Make sure you're protecting your business, right? Recognize what could happen. Assess the what if, the good and the bad, and how that's going to incorporate into how you move forward. One thing I learned here is that, like I mentioned earlier, there are consultants involved typically. There are going to be, big firms that were sitting in the clean room collecting information. They have a lot of data that they've spent a lot of hours going through, and they may hand a deck to you and say, this is what you need to deliver. I would say, don't just walk away with that and think, oh gosh, this is overwhelming. I'm not sure I can do that. There may be some things you say, they way underestimated this and underestimated the skill and talent and the position that where we are in the market. Don't be afraid to modify that information. Don't be afraid to, take it and have them be flexible. Explain it. You have to build your business case, but because the companies have spent a lot of money paying these people to come up with this plan, but you have a lot of control over it, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about, kind of the supply base and mergers that happen there, they're again, take advantage of the opportunities. What's good in both those companies? How can that benefit your business? And one thing I want to just say with the caution point here, this pillar is, if you're going to make a threat to move, it has to be credible, right? If you only have 3 months until your contract's up, you're going to be negotiating with the same company, because it's not really feasible to think that you can make that shift that quickly. And if anybody's telling you that you can, it's that's going to be your life 24/7 for the next 3 months, and you probably will still have a hard time getting it done. So just know what your position is, how much you have, how much flexibility and you have to really make a credible threat. So just understand that, because if you make it and it's not realistic, they're going to know you're not really in a position, and you may get taken advantage of a little bit. Cost containment, stock price, reputation, all of that I touched on. You want to contain your costs. There's a lot of, like I mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity. Sometimes that comes with a lot of cost. So understand what those costs are, how you can control those, and then incorporate it into your program. There's going to be give and take, but be empowered to be fluid and flexible. You have long-term control over this, right? You're in the driver's seat, and again, see the opportunity. So just wanted to make those points. I think I've made them a few times here in the last couple of slides.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Then feeding into, getting to the end here, how do you take that opportunity, that proactiveness, and taking control? And so this is kind of just a visual to kind of show you how, don't just sit back and wait for things to be given to you, go get ahead of it and be the one giving it to them, to these companies that are coming together, and what it is you want, what it is you need, what it is you're concerned about, right? So, first 30 days or so, you guys internally go back with all of your internal stakeholders, your people globally, and kind of look back through all these considerations and buckets of the areas that we looked at today, the pillars, and again, what is going to impact your program, where, why, and get an actionable plan built around it, a concrete action plan, to where you document this, what your reasonings are, and then give that action plan to the companies, both acquired and acquiring, and say, hey, in the spirit of this partnership, this is what we're concerned about. Here are the reasons why, and give them time to digest it, take it to their senior leaders, come together and talk. And give them time to respond to what you are concerned about, or what you want, what you need, and have that kind of actionable joint plan across all of you. I think gives you something very valuable and very strategic, and will drive accountability to then take that, right? And now jointly 90+ days moving forward into the future, you have this agreement where now you can kind of take a look at, okay, what's going to go well, what's easy, what's a red flag, what's high risk, what's very important to us that's not matching up with the acquiring company, and what's our plan to fix it, right? What kind of lays in the middle ground, and go from there. So it gives you that way to look at everything, what needs to be renegotiated, what's a concern, and how do you prioritize it moving forward. So, Colleen, I don't know if you have anything more to say to that. I think it just feeds into.
Yeah, I think you did a great job here, Janie. This is, I think this becomes your your work for the next 3 months, and
Yeah.
take your time to assess things, kind of get your plan, your strategy in place, and then, with each step, just each 30 days, 60 days, whatever, reassess, right? Make sure you're on track, make sure things are going well, make sure your timing is on track. And, I think that's the recipe for success. So,
Yeah, and it's going to be fluid, right? What you may have documented or were concerned about initially, right? It's going to be a living, breathing thing as you move forward. So I think that's important
right.
too for everyone to understand. And just for Colleen, you and I to wrap up here, right? I mean, I think with these 3 bullets, I know I talked about, the first portion of the presentation, but I'm a people person, so I think through and through this is very relationship heavy, and whether it's, our long-term relationships carrying over, maybe not, but then really putting in the energy to building the right relationships with the new on the acquiring side too, I think is really important. Be strategic, and you have to manage it. So it's not something that's just going to kind of run along on its own. You're really going to have to get your hands in this and be part of it, be active, be present.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, especially in travel, it's a relationship business, right?
Yeah.
And I have, I think even before I came into travel, operated on the principle that you get a lot more out of a strong relationship than you do out of just turning RFPs and kind of
Yeah.
going through the motions, because you can come together, bring, great minds together to develop solutions that on your own, or independently or in a competitive environment may not come through. So I would say, manage what you need to manage, lead with your actions, be proactive, right? And what your needs are for your travelers, and, rebuild where you need to rebuild for sure, but maintain and strengthen the relationships that are already in place. So, and then, the technology piece, you're right. That's a strategic inflection point. And that's a place where you can really, make an impact with everything that's happening in the world today with the new technology and the new players and the disruptors, and introduce some of that as change is inevitable for, throughout this process.
Yeah, good opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, let's move forward. And I just want to close with reminding you about that story that I started with about supplier change. And you might recall that I lost my place. And I'm guessing that you felt what I felt at that moment, even though we're virtual, we're through a screen. But what I felt was everyone tensing up, everyone pulling for me to remember and continue, and a spirit of kindness, helpfulness, and hope. And that's really the moral of that story. Not the fact that that manager required the one caveat was that the manager required the CEO to sign off, which she did. And from that success, the travel buyer had management support for innovation, along with a budget to realign a number of other travel management processes. And I think that's the story that you just heard from Jamie and Colleen, which is this is a spirit of partnership that really can take you further than any other way. So with that, Colleen, Jamie, thank you so much for being a part of this. We're grateful that you were and grateful for those that attended. We hope to see you in person, maybe next week in New York or the next time we all get together. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.